Brandon Price, a native of Asheboro, North Carolina, graduated from Fayetteville State University, where he earned a Bachelor's of Art in Political Science in 2005. Following graduation, Price joined Fayetteville Urban Ministry, where he worked for the next 8 years serving this community. In 2015, Price enrolled in Faulkner University, Jones School of Law, earning a Juris Doctorate and Master's of Law degree in Advocacy and Alternative Dispute Resolution. In 2018, Price joined Fayetteville Area Habitat for Humanity, and in 2021, he was named as the organization's new CEO, where he continues to serve today. Please welcome Mr. Brandon Price.
Thank you all so much. Now, if I could ask Justice Jackson, who will be introduced by Chief Justice Judge Tony King, to come forward.
Ketanji Brown Jackson was born in Washington, D.C., and grew up in Miami, Florida. She received her undergraduate and law degrees with honors from Harvard University. She served as a law clerk for 3 federal judges, including Associate Justice Stephen G. Breyer of the Supreme Court of the United States. Justice Jackson subsequently practiced law in the private sector, worked as an attorney, and later as Vice Chair and Commissioner of the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and served as an Assistant Federal Public Defender. In 2012, President Barack Obama nominated Justice Jackson to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. She elevated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit in 2021. Justice Jackson made history in 2022 when President Joseph Biden nominated her as an Associate Justice, the first Black woman ever confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. She took her seat on June 30th of 2022. Now, all rise and receive the Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Thank you so much. You may be seated. I am delighted to be here in North Carolina, my first visit to the state. I have been doing a number of book events over the past year since my book, Lovely One, was released. And I usually start these events by reading a little bit from the preface to give you some background and to get us warmed up. Preface is titled A Sacred Trust. I had to keep reminding myself this moment was real. It was just before noon on the 30th day of June 2022, and I was standing in front of a plain wooden door that would soon open into the Grand West Conference Room of the Supreme Court of the United States. My family was already inside. My husband, Patrick, our daughters, Talia and Layla, and my parents, Johnny and Ellery Brown, were there among the family members and friends who had gathered to witness my historic swearing in. My heart was hammering so loudly that I wondered if the two black-robed men standing on either side of me, Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. and retiring Associate Justice Stephen G. Breyer, could hear it too. Only 2 hours before, they and the other 7 justices of the Supreme Court had issued their final decision of the 2021-22 term. Justice Breyer, a pragmatic consensus builder, was now stepping down from that august body. Having been privileged to serve as one of his law clerks more than 2 decades before, I would be stepping up in his place. I drew a deep breath to steady myself as the door in front of us swung wide and a court officer stepped aside to allow our passage into the room. Suddenly blinded by bright lights, I took a moment to understand that the source was a bank of video cameras that had been set up to record the ceremony. As my eyes adjusted and I processed into the chamber behind the 2 justices, I felt heartened by the sight of my loved ones beaming at me from rows of chairs on the right side of the room. Chief Justice Roberts began by warmly welcoming those present. Then he turned toward me, now assuming a ceremonial air. "Are you prepared to take the oath?" he asked, his tone more formal than it had been a moment before. "I am," I responded, in a voice that sounded firmer than I felt. Patrick positioned himself between Chief Justice Roberts and me and held out a stack of 2 Bibles. "Please raise your right hand," the Chief Justice said, and I did so briskly, simultaneously resting my left palm on the pair of holy books. On top was our ancient Jackson family Bible, its brittle pages protected by the black leather binding that Patrick had had the foresight to get refurbished in 2013 when I'd been appointed to the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. I had sworn every oath since then on this cherished family Bible, just as I would now swear the constitutional oath to be administered to me by Chief Justice Roberts, followed by the judicial oath to be given to me by Associate Justice Breyer. Nominated by President Joe Biden 4 months earlier, I, the daughter of African-American parents who had come of age in the segregated South during the 1950s and early 1960s, would become the 116th justice and the first black woman to sit on the Supreme Court in its 233-year history. These details made the other sacred volume on which I would swear my historic oath doubly significant. Tucked beneath our family's holy book was the Harlan Bible, donated to the court in 1906 by Associate Justice John Marshall Harlan. This tome had been used for the oath-taking by every Supreme Court appointee since then. Each new justice had also signed one of the book's fly leaves after being sworn in. When the court curator brought the Bible to me in my temporary chambers later that afternoon so that I could add my own signature to the venerated roll, I thought about the justices of Harlan's era who collectively decided in the Plessy versus Ferguson opinion that state laws mandating the separation of people by race did not violate the 14th Amendment of the Constitution so long as the separate facilities were equal. Harlan had been the sole dissenter in the notorious 1896 case. And now here I was, affixing my signature to his Bible in black fountain pen ink. only one generation after my mother and father had experienced the spirit-crushing effects of racial segregation in housing, schooling, and transportation while growing up in Florida, their daughter was standing on the threshold of history, the embodiment of our ancestors' dreams, ascending to a position that Justice Harlan and his colleagues likely never imagined possible for someone like me. But if Justice Harlan and his contemporaries could not have pictured this moment, my family and I, and indeed most of America, were fully cognizant of the significance of my nomination and confirmation to our nation's highest court. In subsequent conversations with people from across the country, I learned that I had been carried on a million prayers lifted up on my behalf since the day of my nomination. I also fielded an avalanche of invitations to speak or appear in person as excited well-wishers wanted to know my story in whatever form or fashion I might be willing to tell it. How was it, they wondered, that someone with such an unusual name and from such an unconventional background came to stand in such an unprecedented place, swearing an oath on 2 stacked Bibles that symbolized how far our nation had traveled? Mine has been an unlikely journey in many respects. My book is about that journey. Thank you for being here and allowing me to discuss my history with you.
Just as we get started, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to feel free to take pictures for about 3 minutes. And then as we get deeper into the discussion, I will remind you to put your phones away. So feel free to take pictures at this point. Welcome, Justice Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with all of the cameras.
So many of us are super excited to see you here today.
Yes.
And I have to ask you, Justice Jackson, you are a very accomplished young woman, and I am very curious as to what gave you the audacity to believe that you could be where you are today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, first, let me just say thank you again for being here. There are lots of places you could be right now, and so I'm honored by your presence here this afternoon. I think my story really begins with my family, and it is why I wrote the book.
Yes, ma'am.
To pay tribute to the people and the circumstances that I believed were most responsible for helping me get to the position that I'm in. Let me start, I guess, by just talking a little bit about my birth, because I think it'll give you a sense of where I come from. I was born in 1970, and for those of you, excuse me? Oh, thank you, almost my birthday. For those of you who will recall, 1970 was within a few years of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the end of Jim Crow segregation. As you heard from my introduction, my parents had grown up in segregation in Florida, restricted in their ability to do what they wanted to do, and they went to historically black colleges. My mother went to Tuskegee University. My father went to North Carolina Central. And they graduated in the late 1960s. You recall from history that time being one of very rapid advancement for African Americans, and like so many African Americans, they moved to Washington, D.C., because that was the place that all of the laws and the changes were coming from. So I'm born in 1970, and my parents, who had very fierce pride of their background and upbringing and status as African Americans in this country, wanted me to do all the things that they didn't get to do. So if there were swimming lessons, I was in the swimming lessons. If there was piano lessons, I was doing the piano lessons. I was maybe this big when my mother signed me up for speaking competition, the Miami-Dade County Youth Fair. You would memorize a poem, and I was on the stage with the poem, Margaret's Walker for My People. You know, so I came from people who were very intentional about training me, teaching me that I could do anything I wanted. My parents gave me an African name. It was a part of this entire emphasis on being proud of who I am as an African American in this country.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I think that mentality, to answer your question directly, I think that mentality is what has carried me through my entire career, believing that I could do anything I wanted, to include serve on the Supreme Court.
Amen. Thank you. Now, at this time, I'm going to ask you guys to put away your phones and remind you that you can't video or record via audio or, of course, video as we move forward. So, your name.
Yes.
Could you share with us where that comes from?
Yes. So, my aunt, my mother's only sister, was in, and she also graduated from Tuskegee, by the way. She was in veterinary medicine and went into the Peace Corps out of college, and she was stationed in West Africa. And when I was born, consistent with everything I've told you, my mother's decided that she wanted to name me an African name, and she asked my aunt to send a list of names. And my mother selected Ketanji Onyeka, which she was told means lovely one.
Awesome, awesome. So, now in your book you said that you were sort of voluntold to do the speech.
Yes.
And so how did you feel about that?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, you know, I loved my parents dearly. You know, they, as I said, were very invested in me. When I was born, my parents were public school teachers in Washington, D.C., and my dad was a history teacher at, I don't know if you all are familiar with Washington, but the high school that he taught at is still there, Ballou High School in Washington, D.C. And after a few years, he really started thinking that he might want to go to law school, because he was taking his students to the Hill and to the court and showing them things in history, and he really kind of got the bug about being interested in understanding the law, and in particular the law as it relates to African Americans. And he applied to a number of different law schools and got into the University of Miami, which is where both of my parents had come from. So when I was 3 years old, we moved back to the University of Miami. And my mother was a middle school science teacher, biology teacher, and my dad was a student. And on her salary alone, we lived on campus. And I will never forget, I mean, my earliest memories are of my dad sitting at the kitchen table in the apartment on campus where we lived, and he has his law books, and I have my coloring books, and we're working together. And so I never thought of doing anything other than going to law school. It was just like what people do. And so I had the kind of parents who were always focused on education. My dad was modeling that even when I was a child. And so it was almost nothing for me for my mother to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to be in this speech competition, and I'm going to train you on the poems, and you're going to learn them.
Now, speaking of your birthday, because it's coming up on the 14th.
Yes.
You share a birthday with an important person.
Very.
Tell us about that.
Well, so I didn't learn this, that I shared a birthday with this important person until I was in middle school.
Okay.
And I discovered by flipping through one of the very few magazines that my parents would allow me to have, to look at, Ebony, Essence, Jet, right? Those were the magazines. I discovered a story about upcoming September birthdays, and I noticed that Constance Baker Motley, who was the first African-American female federal judge appointed in this country, and I share a birthday. We were born 49 years to the day apart.
Wow.
And that, for me, began this eye-opening experience of I could not only be a lawyer, I could be a judge. Here's this woman, my birthday twin, and she is absolutely phenomenal. For those of you who are students, who are looking for a subject to read about, to write about, let me just tell you, Judge Motley was amazing. She was a contemporary of Thurgood Marshall. She worked with him in his law group doing civil rights work during the 1950s and the 1960s. She represented many people in this community and other places throughout the South. She was also the first black woman to argue a case in the Supreme Court. She argued something like 10 cases, and she won 9 of them. She was a genius, but she never had a chance to serve on the Supreme Court because of the times in which she lived. And so knowing about her greatness and the circumstances of her life makes me feel so fortunate, so blessed that, you know, I know that although I'm the first black woman on the Supreme Court, I'm not the first black woman who could have done this job. And I feel grateful for being here and doing it.
Absolutely. So I also want to ask you a little bit about now, you participated in speech and debate in high school.
I did.
Tell us about your teacher.
So my teacher was this absolutely larger-than-life woman named Fran Berger. I went to a big public high school in Miami, Florida, and she, Mrs. Berger, when I was in middle school, brought her high school students over to show us what speech and debate was like and what it was about, because she was trying to make sure that we got into her activity when we became high school students. And I was just mesmerized. I mean, she could get anything from anybody. She could talk anybody into anything. And she took a particular interest in me. So I ended up doing speech and debate. I was in speech, not the debate part. My primary activity was original oratory, which is where you write your own 10-minute speeches and you memorize them and then you perform them competitively throughout the year. And so she taught me how to reason and how to write and how to be a competitor in that environment. And it was truly, I think, a pivotal moment that someone outside of my family was believing in me. I mean, she really took me under her wing and changed my life in a lot of ways, to include that she took us to a few national tournaments, and one of them was at Harvard University. And I didn't know anything about Harvard University. I mean, I had no background in colleges going up north or anything. But Harvard had a tournament for high school students, and I went 3 years in a row and did pretty well and saw the campus. And that was the reason why I applied. But I really would not have even thought to apply to a place like Harvard had it not been for her.
Wow. So, which begs a question. You're a competitor.
Yes.
And one of the things that if I'm remembering correctly, you didn't get to graduate from high school.
I didn't graduate from high school. I had to choose between my senior year. I was also the president of my high school class, right, so I was pretty popular in high school. And as the president of the class, you are the master of ceremonies for graduation. I had to choose between graduation and the National Forensics or Speech and Debate competition in my original oratory, in my signature event. I had made nationals. You have to compete to even get to nationals. And I chose nationals. I didn't walk my senior year. and I won, so it was worth it. I made the right choice.
Yeah.
But
So, is it safe to say, and I don't want to misquote you, but is it safe to say that you were pretty successful academically through high school?
I was successful academically. I went to a good public high school. I was in a lot of the honors classes. Again, I come from a family that is very focused on academics, and that was to my benefit as a high school student.
And I want to back up just a little bit. Your mom grew up in public housing. Am I tracking that correctly? Both of your parents?
Not totally grew up. She
Right.
was, when she was young.
Young, yes, ma'am.
Young, and then my grandparents, they moved into a private house, but in a black part of town.
Yes, ma'am.
My mother, when she was very young, moved into what many people know of as Liberty City in Miami. Some of you might know the movie Moonlight. The housing complex that is featured in that movie was where my mother's family started out in Miami. But it's so interesting, and I talk about this in my book, that at the time when my mother was there in the 1950s, it was very, very different. She has incredibly fond memories of her time living in Liberty City. It was new. It had just been built. Even though it was in the segregated part of town, Miami was actually trying to attract middle-class black folks. My grandparents had started a gardening business after coming from Georgia and working as a chauffeur and a cook for a white family, and my grandfather got tired of that and started his own business. So my mother's family was sort of middle class, and they moved into this community, and she loved it. She has great memories. And so it's really interesting to see the comparison and what happened over time to black communities in our cities.
Yes, ma'am. And so Harvard was your reach school?
Harvard was my big reach school. It's everybody's big reach school, to be honest.
Right. And what happened when you told grandma?
So I was very close to my grandmother, and my grandmother, as I mentioned, grew up in rural Georgia. She was basically an orphan, did not have a lot of schooling, did not complete formal schooling, and nevertheless, through the gardening business, my grandparents put all 5 of their children through college because they believed in education. But my grandmother's perspective was HBCUs. And I had mentioned to her that I wanted to go to school in Washington, D.C. I had gone there for a 2-week summer camp program in speech and debate when I was in high school. And so I really liked Washington, D.C. I was born there, and I wanted to go back. And when I got into Harvard, I said, Grandma, I got into Harvard. Look at my letter, And she said, oh, Howard, baby, that is so wonderful. And I believe that she never knew, ever, that I went to Harvard. She just thought, Howard, this is the best school ever.
But you do go to Harvard.
I did go to Harvard.
And there's so often that we arrive at certain destinations that we don't always think that we're going to arrive at. And one of the things that stood out to me when you talked about your initial experience at Harvard, you mentioned imposter syndrome. You mentioned that twice in your book, and once when you were talking about your initial experience at Harvard. Take us through that.
Well, it was really different. I mean, again, I had not had any experience. I grew up in the South. I didn't know anything about New England and the winter. And the experience of being on this foreign campus with their strange ways, and I had done well academically, but it was hard. And I think a lot of students, when they go away for college, especially if it's in a different environment, have difficulty adjusting. And I really kind of crashed out in the first couple weeks because, as someone mentioned out there, my birthday is in September, and it was my 18th birthday, and which was like 2 weeks after my freshman year started. Nobody knew it was my birthday. I'm in this strange place. It's the first time I'd ever been away from my family on my birthday, and it was really, really hard. And I just remember going to the main campus library and sitting on the steps and like sobbing on my birthday.
Right.
And a couple of things kind of turned it around.
Okay.
One was within this same time frame, I was walking on the path in the yard, and a black woman I didn't know was coming toward me, and as we crossed on the path, she leaned over and said, "Persevere," and kept walking. And I was like, you know, but that stuck with me. You know, she had seen something in my face, in my demeanor, and she just wanted to give me a word. And then on my actual birthday, I got a letter from my aunt. I mentioned that she was in the Peace Corps. She went on to become a missionary. She traveled all over the world doing missionary work, and she would write me letters. And she had written me a birthday letter, and in the letter she said something to the effect of, "I want you to remember that the Lord has put angels all around you to guard you and light your path." And I thought, I wonder if that woman was an angel. And it really sort of started to change my mindset about feeling alone and feeling out of place at Harvard.
And then you, shortly thereafter, ran into an issue involving the flag.
So this was a couple of years in. This is after I'd met my rooming group.
Okay.
During my freshman year, the second semester, I took a class called Black Women Writers, which attracted a lot of black women, which was one of the best things I ever did, because I met this group of women who became my closest friends. We still hang today, and we lived together. We formed a rooming group. There were 6 of us, and we formed a rooming group and moved to this section of campus. And it was either our sophomore or our junior year. I'm walking with Lisa, who is one of my friends, and we look up, and in the window of one of the dorms facing the yard, someone has hung this huge Confederate flag. And they put a light behind it to make sure that everybody could see it. And we were all members of the Black Students Association. So everybody saw it, and it became a huge thing. It became a huge thing. Because we really felt like, you know, we had found our group, we were doing okay, and here was this symbol that had obviously been unfurled to try to get a rise out of us and all of the hateful things that were associated with it. And I talk about this in the book. What I noticed, though, is, you know, we were passing out flyers and we were trying to get the university to get this person to take it down. And over time, we kind of like weren't going to classes consistently. It was like eating into our study time, you know, spending all the time trying to figure out and address this issue was a problem. And I remember going to one of the Black Student Association meetings and remembering and recalling and reciting a recent, at the time, quote from Toni Morrison, who said, you know, we have to be really careful because we need to remember that the very real function of racism is distraction, that it keeps you from doing your work. Someone says, you know, your head is not shaped properly, and you spend your whole time trying to get scientists to disprove it. Someone says you don't have any kingdoms, and you spend your time getting the historians trying to respond, you know. And I thought, you know what, that's kind of like what's happening here. We need to make sure that we are continuing to do the work so that we don't flunk out, which is precisely what this person would want us to do. And so it was a really kind of an eye-opening moment in terms of figuring out priorities and making sure that no matter what happens, you're continuing to do what you've been called to do in that situation.
Now, was this the first time that you remember experiencing like real racism?
You know, I would say not the first time, no. I mean, it wasn't a constant. I grew up in a pretty multicultural, open situation. My high school was predominantly white. Most of my friends were Jewish, and we really had a wonderful general relationship. But there were times where things would happen, sure.
Tommy.
Tommy was one of those times.
Okay. At the time, and I want you to share about Tommy.
Yeah.
What I would like to know about Tommy in that situation is if you understood at the time what was happening.
You know, I don't know that I fully understood. This is a situation that occurred when I was pretty young. We were still on the campus of the University of Miami, so I'm 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And I had a little kind of play space. Back in the day, this is a long time ago, so some of you won't recognize the scenario, but back in the day when I was growing up, parents would just say, go on and play and come back at dinner time when you see it get dark. You know, we didn't have phones, so I had found my little place where I would go and hang out and play, and in this space, I met a little white boy whose parents obviously also lived on the campus or were around. And we hung out, we played, we, did what children do, ate lunch and did whatever. And at one point, his mother came along, who I guess didn't know who I was. But essentially the next day, he said he was not allowed to play with me anymore. And it was very painful. And I don't know, it was no words were spoken that really suggested, other than he suggested that his mother said that we were too different to be friends or to play together. And it was painful. I wrote about it a couple of years later. I found my mother keeps everything, so I have like all the stuff where I'd written about how I felt.
So in Harvard, your first few years, you met your girlfriends.
I did.
The ones that your crew.
My crew.
The ones that helped you get through.
Yes, indeed.
And you also met somebody else.
I did. I met my husband.
All right.
I met my husband, which was very interesting. So this is the end of my sophomore year, the beginning of my sophomore year and the beginning of his junior year. And I decide to take another class about race in a way. It's called The Changing Concept of Race in America. And he's in this class. Now, it's a little unusual, not unheard of, but for those of you who don't know, my husband is not black. He is, in fact, something that people refer to as a Boston Brahmin. This is a category or class of people who can trace their origins back to the Mayflower. And my husband is 7th generation Harvard. Let that sink in. 7 generations in his family have gone to Harvard, and they live in Boston, and it's a thing.
Yes, ma'am.
But he is very interested, very open. He's a sociology major, and he's taking this class on race. We're in the class together, and he is nice, and he's talking to me, and he's tapping me on the shoulder and hanging his keys on my earrings and chatting me up like 3 days a week. The class, I can't remember quite these details, but the class is like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then on Tuesday and Thursday I have a government class because I'm a government major, and I see him in the class and I'm waving, and he's like looking at me like he doesn't know who I am. And I'm like, this is weird. He's on again, off again, one day, hot and cold. It was crazy. So I said to my roommates, what's going on? They're like, leave him alone. He's obviously insane. Don't talk to him anymore. So I said, no, you know what? I am going to confront him on one of the friendly days. So on a friendly day, this is maybe 2 weeks into this happening, I say, why don't you talk to me in our government class? And he said, I'm not taking a government class. And I said, yes, you are. I see you in this class. And he's like, oh, you must be talking about my identical twin brother. Because he has an identical twin brother. So after that, that got cleared up, which I was happy to hear. But, you know, we started hanging out, and I would say it was probably a whole school year, before we expressed any interest. And by that time, I actually thought he wasn't interested in me,
right,
to be honest. I had never really dated. I went to a big white public high school and never really had any romantic interest. But it was wonderful. I mean, he really rose to the occasion. We dated for almost 7 years before we got married, and we will be married in October, 29 years.
Yeah. Well, now, Justice Jackson, I gotta ask you this.
Okay.
I am a younger brother.
Yes.
Yeah. And when I introduced my wife to my family, it wasn't my parents that I was concerned about. It was my sister.
Yeah.
And you tell a funny story, or at least to me, that when you brought your white husband home,
when we
I
were
just
dating,
want to put it out there.
dating.
Oh, yes, your
Yes.
white boyfriend.
Yes.
Home, your brother had a reaction.
My brother was like, who is this dude walking in my house? My parents had a reaction. I mean, you know, there was some touch and go there for a moment. But again, we dated for a long time. And my parents really saw how much he cared for me. You know, all they ever wanted was for me to be happy.
Right.
And so over time, they got to know him. They got to know his family. It helped that his family was from Boston. So whenever they came up to visit me in school, we would ensure that, you know, they got to know each other. And it turns out that our families are really both quite traditional. His parents have been married for 56 years now. My parents have been married for 52 years now. I mean, we come from very similar families in terms of values and the things that we care about.
Yes,
and I think that really helped in the long run.
All right. So I want to get into your career a little bit.
Yes.
All right. Now, you clerked a few times.
I did. I clerked for three judges.
Yes, ma'am. And how were those experiences, and how did they stand out?
Oh, they were extraordinary. I mean, if we have students in here who are law school students or people who are thinking about law school, let me just encourage you to think about clerking, because clerking for a judge is the opportunity to work as an assistant in the judge's chambers to help them prepare their opinions, to help them get ready for court. And if you're thinking about being that kind of lawyer, there really is, in my view, no better preparation, because you see how a judge thinks. You understand what is persuasive to a judge. And if you're a litigator, as a lawyer, your job is to persuade judges. So you really do get an insight that's extraordinary. And I was fortunate because I got to clerk out of law school for a judge at the district court level. In our federal system, we have 3 levels. The district court, which is the trial level. That's how the process starts a case. And then the person who loses at the district court has the ability to go to the Court of Appeals, which is the second level. And then there's the Supreme Court. And I clerked for judges at all 3 levels of the federal system. So I felt very prepared as a lawyer and as a judge.
And then you became a federal judge.
And then I became a federal judge. I became a federal judge at the district court level. And then, as you heard from my bio, was elevated to the Court of Appeals. And now I serve on the Supreme Court.
What I find interesting is you clerked for Justice Breyer.
Breyer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And he was, if I'm not mistaken, appointed by President Carter,
Yes.
who has a very strong affinity for Habitat for Humanity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. Full circle.
So, yeah, we'll just
There
bring
you
it
go.
around. Habitat, we have to shoot that little plug.
A little plug for a very important institution.
Your journey, well documented.
Yes.
And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time, especially because I have so many good relationships with strong women of color that are professionals.
Yes.
Who sometimes are forced to make the decision career or family. And you drove by that fork in the road and went straight. You said, I'm going to do both.
I'm going to do both. I'm going to do both.
So how have you all met? By the way,
Yes.
if not being a judge or justice was enough, your husband
Yes.
is a surgeon,
My husband is a surgeon.
a well sought after surgeon,
Yes.
well accomplished,
Yes.
and you all have 2 children, your parents also.
Yes.
And now I'll be honest, now I was laughing at the minivan trips
Yeah.
when I was reading
In my
on your
book.
journey to work.
Yes.
But as I talk to a lot of my friends, they often are faced with the decision or feel that they're faced with the decision to decide family or career.
It's a tough decision. I can't, each family, each individual has to navigate their own path. What I can say is I wrote about ours in the hopes that people will see that it is possible to have a career and to have a family, even one with challenges like mine, and I talk about the challenges of my family in the book. The most crucial ingredient for me has been having a true partnership with my husband. I think it was very helpful for us to meet in college and to meet when we both knew that we wanted to have professional careers. We were both going on to graduate school. He went to medical school, I went to law school, and that meant that we were both committed to the straight path, to doing both of these things. And at no time in our relationship has it ever been a situation where we aren't working together in some way. So, for example, when he was doing his residency, surgical residency is really, really demanding. The medical school is 4 years, and if you're going to be a surgeon, you have 5 years on top of that before you actually become a surgeon. His residency was longer, but when he was in residency, I took a job at a law firm that I didn't really want to be at necessarily, because somebody had to pay the bills and we had an infant, and so I kind of throttled back what I was doing while he was really pressing forward with his training. Mm-hmm. When I clerked for Justice Breyer, when I clerked for the Supreme Court, it was like all I could do to just go to work, the hours, the pressure. So he took 2 years off of his 5-year residency and moved down to DC to support me while I was going through that. So we did that sort of thing throughout, and he does laundry and he cooks and he does all the things, because especially right now,
right,
because I'm in full throttle mode in the current state of affairs.
So you have 2 children.
We do have 2 children.
And as I was reading in the book, you had some challenges with your first child.
Yes.
Even with, in nursing and doing some other pieces.
Yes. It was very, very challenging. So my older daughter, and we ended up talking about this in the book after much family deliberation. Do I include it? Don't I include it? Our older daughter is autistic, and she did not get diagnosed until middle school. And when she was in elementary school, it was very challenging, because obviously she was exhibiting the kinds of signs and symptoms, but we didn't know what it was, and she was just a very challenging child, and she was our first. So we also didn't have any basis of comparison. We didn't know what we didn't know about parenting. And so I included in the book a lot of the early struggles that we had, to include my having to adjust my expectations as a parent. Because as you heard, my only model for parenting was the kind of parent who said, no, you get out there on that stage and you say that poem and you do it, you can do it. You know, my parents were very encouraging, but they were always encouraging me to be all that I could be, to do all that I could do. And she struggled with that model of parenting. She really couldn't do, you know, she was neurologically not in a place to handle the pressure of a regular school and a regular environment. And my husband and I are overachievers, having met at Harvard, we're doing all the things, and we were putting the kind of pressure on her that we had had growing up, and it wasn't working. And that was really, really, really hard. And so I put the story in the book because, again, I want people to know that it is still possible to achieve your own professional goals, even if you have difficulties at home.
Absolutely. I ask that because obviously as a parent, sometimes we push our kids as hard as we can, and I just wonder how you and your husband handled, you know, her not meeting all of your expectations early on before the diagnosis.
Yes, it's very, very difficult. I mean, we struggled with what this meant. You know, when people were telling us that she wasn't hitting the various milestones, and it was like, what do you mean? Our daughter is perfect. Of course she's perfect. And so we really had to adjust our own views. And I think one of the more interesting parts of my book is how this struggle impacted my younger daughter, who is neurotypical. She's 3.5 years younger. And I didn't really find out until she was applying to college,
Right.
her view of how hard it had been to be in a family where all of the oxygen was directed at her sister, where all of the focus was on trying to shore up her sister. And so she wrote, for her college essay, she wrote a story about that I put, that with her permission, and if you get the audiobook, she reads it herself. She wrote a story about it that was very moving.
So, first of all, that was really moving when I read her accounts and being strong enough. And I don't want to spoil the book because I want you guys to buy it if you haven't. But it was really touching. And another one of those touching moments for me, again, as a father, is when I read the part about your oldest daughter. You and your husband set your daughters down when you're getting ready to,
Yes.
when you're thinking that you're going to be in the run for, be selected. I'm sorry. And so going through the confirmation hearings, they sort of dig into your life a lot.
They dig into your life a lot. I mean, you know, for weeks on end, they are asking you for information. You're giving, tax forms. You're doing all of the things because they have to run background checks. They don't want any surprises should you be nominated. So I knew that I was on the short list. They do this for a handful of people that they are really serious about considering. I didn't know I was going to be chosen, but when it got to the point where they were really, the FBI is contacting my friends, and they're doing a pretty significant background check, I was concerned that because of my older daughter's struggles, this would be something that would become public, that it would be part of the record, and maybe she wouldn't want that. Maybe she wouldn't want people to know this about her, and I needed to respect that. And so my husband and I, at this time the girls are both in high school, and we sit them down and basically say, I'm in this being considered for the Supreme Court, but I won't do it if this is something that you're not comfortable with. If people were to find out, if people were to know, And they were both very supportive of my going forward. But it was the only reason why I did, because I would not have done so. Yeah.
I was sharing with my wife, like when I read that part where she talks about where she was sort of stoic during the explanation, and these are my words, not yours. But she was, based on how you described her, she was kind of stoic during the thing, and your younger daughter was extremely excited. Yeah, Mom, you got to do this. And then she was just kind of like, and then she thought for a moment, and then she came, no, you need to do this. And I don't care if they know. They need to know. Other families are dealing with this. And so that was, man, that just hit me home because working
she basically said, this is who I am. There's nothing wrong with me. This is the way I navigate the world, and if people know, so what?
Absolutely. Now, again, you're a black woman, and you deal with black hair.
Yes.
So I want to bring up the Crown Act and how that has impacted some of the things that you have been able to do.
Well, actually, the Crown Act it didn't impact me. It impacts so many other people. I started my hair journey well before that, out of necessity. So I will say, I used to wear a relaxer when I was in college and in law school. One of my favorite things actually was to take the 3 hours that it took to wash my hair and put it in rollers and sit under the hard dryer. I mean, it was great. I have very thick hair, as you can tell, and I loved my spa afternoons on a Sunday afternoon, washing my hair and doing the whole thing. When I got Justice Breyer's clerkship, there was not time for this sort of thing. Right. So I actually cut my hair off, and I got a jerry curl, little, cut it all off, gone, like shaved my head, because I didn't have time.
Right.
And once I started growing it back in, I wore braids, but now I'm a mother, and I'm in the law firm, and I'm trying to, make ends meet, and it never got to the point where I had the time. And I write in the book about, long before it was really popular, seeing this woman crossing. I was coming out of my law firm, crossing the street, going through this building, and she had what I have now, which are sister locks. Very, very small. And I was like, and I chased her down. And I said, who does her hair? And she gave me her sister locks practitioner. And I've been going to the same person. I've not gone to a single other person to do my sister locks in 18 years. It was the perfect solution for me, because you just get to the point where you have so many other responsibilities. I loved the relaxer. I hated the rain, but I loved the relaxer. But I didn't have time for it anymore, and I needed to find something that was going to be true to who I was and that I could just keep going. And that's what I do.
Awesome. And it's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is. As now you get confirmed as a Supreme Court Justice, and you start work right away.
Yes.
Were there any surprises to being a justice? Because you had clerked for the Supreme Court at that point.
Yeah, I had clerked, and so there weren't that many surprises. I mean, it was 20 years before, but the institution doesn't change that much in terms of practices, so I was pretty familiar with the work and the ways of the court. I think the thing that caught me off guard a little bit was how formal the justices are, and how there are practices that are not even known to or not even exhibited to the public. So, for example, before we go out on the bench, you're aware of the oral arguments, which is sort of the big public event. Before we go out on the bench, we shake every other justice's hand, every time. Before we meet, we shake every other justice's hand, every time. It's a part of the culture of the court, the history of the court. I was surprised that that's what we do, but we do. I was surprised, I think, about the formality in conference. Conference is the meeting that we have after the oral arguments to discuss the cases and to vote, to decide. And in conference, we are very formal going around. We don't, just kind of have a loose discussion.
Right.
And I was surprised about that as well.
Well,
Is that the exit music? Like,
Yeah. I
like
think
the
that's cute for me to
Oscars?
try to wrap
The
it up.
Oscars?
Yeah. So I have a couple of quick fun questions for you.
Yes.
Well, they're fun to me anyway. All right. So, and you have to choose between one or the other.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
The color purple. The Fantasia version or the original version?
Original.
All
For
right.
sure.
All right.
For sure. For sure.
Do you prefer a garden party or a cookout?
Cookout.
Yeah.
Cookout.
All right. Before I Let Go, the original version or Beyonce?
Beyonce. Yeah, Beyonce.
And last but not least, your favorite leisurely thing to do. What do you just do for fun?
Oh, gosh. I don't have a lot of spare time, but I would say I like to knit or crochet while I'm listening to a podcast or a book on tape or something like that. Yeah, fiber arts.
Absolutely. Well, Justice Jackson, I really hope that I have earned the privilege of your time today.
Oh, my goodness, you were
And
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of Fayetteville Area Habitat for Humanity, Fayetteville State University, we want to say thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
Supreme Court Justice Jackson. I'm going to ask everyone if you could just kind of hang out for just a second while we, first of all, get the justice back into her vehicle and she's able to leave campus. But while she's doing that, first of all, I want to say thank you so much to Fayetteville State University, your Board of Trustees, Chancellor Allison, Dr. Clark, Chief Holmes, and Shamika. You guys have been amazing partners in putting this together. We could not have done this without you. Provost, thank you for hosting. And Habitat for Humanity, our staff. Raise your hand, staff. Thank you guys so much. And to every single one of you near and far that have traveled all over to be here with us today, I am incredibly humbled to have you and to host you, to join us here at Fayetteville Area Habitat for Humanity. And in case you were wondering why we're here at Fayetteville State University, this is home for me. This is home. We are home. And that is what Habitat for Humanity is all about. We are about creating homes where people can come together and live and thrive. The cornerstone of wealth, especially in the African American community, comes from home ownership. It comes from home ownership. And so I will share with you that we have 3 programs, one of which you've already saw, which is our youth program, where we do trade days and summer construction camp throughout the summer. But the other 2 is new construction programs where we partner with families, and they have a mortgage. I don't know why people think we build houses and give them away. That's not true. But we partner with them for them to receive a low interest mortgage that is affordable for them and their family. And so we've been able to do that because of the support that we receive from our community. We also do home repairs for families, doing aging in place as our seniors get older. Sometimes it becomes harder for them to operate in their existing homes, so we have to do handicap accessibility for them, widening the doorway so a wheelchair can get into the bathroom, lowering cabinets so they can still cook, lowering the the light switch so they can still turn the light on and off. These are the things that are happening inside of our community every single day. And if you have seniors in your family, make sure that you take care of them, because they took care of us and they paved the way to make it so that we could be here with us today. I'd also like to thank our board of directors, Habitat for Humanity's board of directors. Thank you all for hiring me. But giving me an opportunity to be here, and I am incredibly thankful for our entire team, Habitat for Humanity, and also Ashley Thompson, who is our marketing director, who helped throw this thing together for us. As we do with everything that we do, I'm just an old school country boy from a Baptist church, and before we go anywhere, we have to pray out. So if I can get you to lower the music real fast for me. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Father God, we say thank you. We are deeply humbled, God, for the opportunity that you have blessed us with here on today to host Justice Jackson. God, I pray that something she said, something that she did while she was here resonates with every single person in the audience this morning and afternoon. God, help us as we go forth to try to prepare and propel ourselves into our careers. And Lord, I ask that you would send those angels just like you sent to her to help encourage us along the journey. Those of us who do still kind of deal with imposter syndrome sometimes, God, I ask that you remove that, infuse in us people who can affirm us, who can support us, who can direct us, who can mentor us and help us on our journey. Father God, we are forever thankful for your love and your protection and your grace. We love you, dear God, and we thank you. Amen. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.